Let's go.
Oh, hey. Is there any audio? Do we have audio? We have audio. Hey, welcome everybody. Sweet. Oh, so good to see you all. Ichiro, how you been? How you been? Ah, awesome. Good to hear. All right. So yeah, welcome to our inaugural show here. Keep hitting the wrong buttons. Yeah, no. Yeah, that's the spoiler. Working on the yeah. All right. Shush, we're back to the pre-guest banter portion here, all right? We're trying to go through all the rituals of an actual talk show, and you get introduced later, Dan, and we don't show you now, okay? Yeah. Wait, nobody's hearing Ichiro? Ichiro, if you can just unmute Ichiro in Zoom. No? You're logged into Zoom. Okay.
Chris, can you mute?
Oh, this is not good. This is not good.
No, wait. Is that better? Can you hear me?
All right.
Yeah, real mother.
All right. Yeah. We're on a roll here. So yeah, I wrote a smashing, insightful opening monologue, full of industry wisdom and comedy. But then I saw, I was reviewing Dan Williams, our guest today's extensive library. I didn't want to take any time away from him. And I wanted to move highlights onto him. So I think we should get to that. Also, I lied about having written a monologue.
Since when have you ever needed a monologue? You could get up in front of like 500 people. You're like, so Ziba actually, incidentally, Ziba, a BAFTA award-winning Ziba Scott, talked about his BAFTA earlier today. And during that, I mean, it was completely extemporized. And I think he gave it to the Queen of England, as far as I know.
Give a lot of things to the Queen of England. Anyway, let's move on to let's bring on our guest here tonight. Before we bring on, I just want to tell you. So our guest tonight is Dan Williams. I think a lot of you know him. He's been a really great active member of the Boston Indies community for years. One of the most likely people a friendly face you're gonna find at a lot of events. So if you haven't met him yet, look out for this guy when we're all back together. And when I think of Dan, I think puzzle games. I think game jams, and I think game industry speculation. This guy likes to keep his nose on the pulse of the things. One keeps their nose on the pulse of things, I believe, is how it works. He's got no fewer than 9 games up on his itch.io page.
Yeah, and I just sent over the link over the chat, so if you want to play them while Dan talks about each one of them.
Yeah. So check those out. And a lot of those, there's both team projects there and solo projects where he's handled code, art, music, and all the rest himself. So he's really got a wide spread there. So please give a warm round of applause to our guest today, Dan Williams. Does Dan have audio? I'm guessing we're gonna have to unmute him on in Zoom too.
Growing pains. We're doing great.
I'm unmuted by host.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear a couple of Dans.
This is 2020 talk shows.
Sweet. Yeah, actually, it sounds kind of cool, cyber-like. All right, so Dan, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us today. We appreciate this.
Of course, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be a guest on the inaugural Bit Show.
I was going through your games, and the first ones that really caught my attention here. I mean, I've looked at your games before, but what I wanted to show today was actually one of your older ones, just Dynamic Dino Island. This one really grabbed me here. What is Dynamic Dino Island?
Well, that is a Ludum Dare game that I made for, I believe, 35, where you have sort of like a randomly generated island, and you can reconfigure the island to put dinosaurs on it using various means of like terrain manipulation. So if you think of like ActRaiser or just anything like Minecraft or something like that, you can sort of plant the land, take it away, and plant grass and put dinosaurs there. And there are herbivores and carnivores, and the carnivores will eat the herbivores, and the herbivores eat the grass. And so the whole goal is to try and make a balancing ecosystem out of it with the dinosaurs. But it's a jam game, and it was just me working on it, so they're very limited mechanics.
One of the things that really caught me about it was that the win condition is that you have to have a lot of population of the dinosaurs, but half of that population has to eat the other half to survive, which I really like that dynamic of. It has this happy, positive accrual thing, but half of what's going on is brontosaurs being eaten.
Yeah, well, like any sort of ecosystem simulator, you're going to have different tiers of things eating other things, typically. So, and I like dinosaurs, so it was just sort of an easy way to go about it.
I think one of the
I don't really take into account any ethics or anything. I was just like, animals eat other animals. That's
I don't
fine.
think that's unethical, but like, wasn't one of the earlier simulations on computers the whole rabbit-fox cycle, right? The rabbit population goes up, and therefore the foxes simulated eat the rabbits, and the rabbit population goes down, and the foxes starve to death, and then that goes down. That's I think kind of not as pretty as Dynamic Dino Island, but sort of similar.
Yeah, sort of a similar idea. There was another game that somebody made, just came out. It's a web game called Orb Farm. The web address is orb.farm. And it's super neat. Yeah, it's just a really neat, like, sort of sandbox ecosystem thing where you can make like a little fishbowl essentially. But I recommend people check that out. I was having a lot of fun with that the other day.
Yeah. Did you say that they directly ripped you off with Dynamic Dino Island, or?
Yes, and my lawyer has been in touch with them.
Well, Dynamic Dino Island has both a dino dance party when you beat a level, and all the dinosaurs are abducted by aliens at the end of the level. So it's really got that. It's got that on a lot of things. And you did this quickly. This was a Ludum Dare game.
Yes.
And you've done a number of these. What is Ludum Dare, real quick, like, and why do you like participating in it?
It is a game jam, which I think probably most people on watching this are familiar with game jams, where you make a complete game start to finish in a very small period of time. The Ludum Dare ones are typically 20 or 48 hours for one person, but you can have teams that can do, I think it's 72 hours or so. But I like doing them because it's nice to sort of get that rhythm going of actually completing projects start to finish. And you taking everything into account, like the UI and the credits and the start screen and all that stuff. And I don't know, it's just really nice to like, because people don't ship games that often, unless you're like Stephen Lavelle. And so, yeah, so when you sort of lose that feeling of completion unless you're doing something like that. And it's really nice to do. And also, if you have an interest in sort of fleshing out a mechanic that you've been thinking about, like I think in that one I wanted to explore pathfinding, it's really good for that as well.
Yeah, like I said, people don't ship games that often. You've shipped, I think your itch page in the last few years has more than I've put out in my 10 years of making games here. So your jam strategy is working.
This is the shout out to everybody.
It's fun.
In the chat.
It's a lot of fun to get that out.
Are you counting Xeno Overpass in that, your OOV, Ziba?
I have a number of games I try not to count some days. When anybody asks me how many games you put out, I pause and think, how many do I want to admit to?
I don't know. You have 9 Block Hooper games out.
That's true.
Yeah. Another one of your jam games that I found really interesting. This one's a team game. And this one is from the, what was the name of it? It was like the Great Art Games project. This was the Goethe Institute was doing globally funding jams, doing a contest. And they had an event here in Boston. And I did some little introductions for it. Michael Carrier also, we helped out with that in a tiny way. And actually, it turned out that day the guy who runs Ludum Dare, Mike Kasperzak, was in town, so he came by to give a little a speech.
You met Mike, Dan?
At that event, right? You met Mike Kasperzak that day.
Yes. Yeah, he was super nice. I had only seen him on Twitter before then. I had never met him before.
No, he's a real person.
I know.
He comes to Boston. Yeah, he comes to Boston occasionally. He should be here. He's an honorary Bostonian at this point.
Yeah, let me tell you a story about how nice Mike Kasperzak is. That day that he was in town visiting for, he was staying with me, and he came later to be at that jam. Early in the day, he was home alone because I had to do some work, and there we go. There's my camera. He was home alone, and he heard my toilet dripping. So he went to a hardware store, and he purchased everything he needed to fix it, and fixed my running toilet while I was out. And then
that's awesome. That's really kind. Like, so you also said that Dan was pretty like a sort of kind, nice guy. So I guess like you have to. Do you?
Right. Are you saying, do jams make you nice, or do nice people jam?
Yeah.
Is that?
I think mostly nice people jam. Like people like getting together and working together, and I think it's also a great tool to find out who you work well with. Like anybody that I've worked on a project with thus far, I would definitely work on again. Even at a company or something like that. I think it's just super great to try that out, like speed dating almost.
Yeah, so I just want to zoom in then on this project you made of them called Struggling Dreams.
Yeah,
so actually gonna. Oh yeah, there we can actually show a bit of it there. So what was the first off? There were some constraints to this project, right? And how did you use those to end up with this?
So that was one that we picked for the Boston-based Goethe Jam. And in that one, that was the first time I had ever touched Unity. I worked with Jeff Campbell and Joe Marchuk and Aslanta Chan, who, they're all from this area. They've all sort of spread out across the globe at this time, but like Jeff's in Zurich, Aslanta is in California, and Joe is in Shanghai, I believe. But yeah, that was a project that we made for that jam, and the theme of that jam was to make something about art and politics. So I decided to go for the darkest route that I could think of, and almost like in a challenging way too, because at the time the Syrian refugee crisis was sort of a real problem in Germany. And I was slightly on a tangent, but I was on a random bus ride going from Vermont to here. And I met a woman from Germany on the bus, and she was complaining about the refugees over there, and basically just echoing the, well, why can't I have my free meal kind of thing. And it sort of like disturbed me as she was talking about it. So I, in a way of like challenging authority and, kind of a poke in the eye of the jam, I decided to make something that is a very sensitive topic in Germany at the time. Thinking that it would just be a lot of fun to do that. And so the game is about you're trying to help Syrian refugees escape a war zone by making them gather strength mentally, by reminding them what life would be like normally. And if you don't do that, then they perish. So I did that, and then we actually won the contest for Boston with that, because there were I think it was 8 or 9 cities across the world that each hosted their own jam, and they picked winners out of each one, and then from that they paid for them to go to the Amaze Festival, which is an absolutely wonderful video game festival in Europe. It's sort of like like a Woodstock kind of thing, but for video games. And it was just a wonderful experience. We felt super accomplished, and so I'm now a quote unquote award-winning game developer, much like yourself, Ziba. Yeah, and so I got to meet a bunch of developers from all over the world and got to hang out for a week in Germany, and it was an absolute blast. And I recommend Amaze Fest to everybody who would like just the most interesting vacation that they could have. And yeah, that's what that was. It came out well. We were going to work on a further version of it, but it just never came together because, like I said, everybody just spread out across the world afterward.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things that's nice about a jam game, right? You can do it like, Regatta Go, we did it and we left. And I guess my question is, maybe to the audience, is are people doing jam games more now than they were before, or is everybody out of time? I kind of feel like there are a lot of people who are cooped up and wanting more interaction.
I've been seeing a lot of people do like impromptu jams recently, and of course, the Ludendare, every single one gets bigger than the last. So, but I don't know if it's like commensurate with the crisis that's been going on.
Now, I did want to talk about something you did that was bigger, more focused than a jam, and it's back to puzzles. Before we talk about Pictassembler specifically, am I right in assuming that puzzles seem to be your go-to genre to make, and are they also your go-to genre to play?
They have been my go-to for making in the past couple of years for sure. After I was working on a game before called Gravestuck, where you were this little sort of like paladin monk thing flying around shooting a bunch of demons, and that was sort of like just like an action game that I wanted to make. But honestly, after I went to Germany for Maze Fest, and I got to meet all these other developers that are just doing so many more interesting things than just your sort of like arcade action game, as it were. Not to say that those can't be interesting, but what I find emotionally more compelling. I realized that I didn't want to make a violent game, and so I kind of switched up a little bit and sort of started looking into puzzle games, and I'm a real big fan of like the Zachtronics games and Sudoku and Picross and those kind of things, as well as the Sokoban puzzles, which I've gotten way more into over the last year. So I wanted to make like an adventure game like Zelda, but I wanted to make it all puzzle-based for your progression. So I started working on a game called Gnome Rads, which I'm still working on. And then as I was going through, I decided to veer off and make a side project of my side project, as I think we're all want to do. And I ended up just spinning that off in the main mechanic of that game into its own game called Pictassembler. And that game is sort of like a construction, programming, engineering game, much like a Zachtronics type game.
And you am I right that you brought a clip with you today? Can you set up that clip for us?
Sure. How unexpected. I had no idea. Yeah, so this is just the trailer for the game. It's on my YouTube page and on Steam. So basically, it's just showing the progression of the game from the building the very first parts of a puzzle all the way to the final completion of it.
Oh, great. Well, then let's cue that up.
I realize that the trailer perhaps is not the most cogent, especially after I got a lot of responses from people saying that they couldn't follow what was going on. But
Dan, never apologize for your work. It's always intentional and it is always art.
I mean, I liked how it came out, but I also want people to understand it. So it's okay. I can always do something better, which is like the next game that I'm working on, which is very similar to Pictassembler, but instead of assembling pixel art pictures, you're assembling pieces of islands together to make little habitats. But yeah, as you can see, there's a lot of planning and a lot of automation that go on in this game to eventually build out the pixel art image.
Yeah, as I was playing it, where the audio is going to get messed up, I say there. Sorry, but as I was playing it, one of the realizations came quickly is that there seemed to be so many different solutions that distance and time were related. I had to create circuitous paths for the purpose of delaying things, moving things forward, which is it got really complex and in a rich, puzzly way, very good, quick. How did you manage that? How did you determine the mechanics you were going for, how they would add up, and how you knew if those were adding up properly to be a successful puzzle game, to be what you wanted it to be?
Well, the mechanics that I put in there, because they spun out from the other game that I was working on, I had refined those over the course of about 2 years. Like, it actually started out where I was debating on constructing like almost like mathematical equations that would go, across and down like a crossword, but would pass along different elemental features to each other. And that ended up sort of worming its way into what you see in Pictassembler, where you're essentially constructing blocks, block shapes together, but you have to take into account the order that the blocks come together because they stick together. And once I got the mechanic of them sticking together like that kind of made it. Not to say that I didn't work diligently on refining it, but I felt like I kind of stumbled into something that I hadn't really seen before in any of their games. And I really like those Zachtronics games, as I mentioned, but they can tend to be very, very difficult. So I thought, well, I will make something similar, but maybe it won't be as difficult. And then it ended up being just as difficult and complex as the other ones. So I've been told by a lot of people that they're very intimidated by the puzzle solving, and I've seen people sort of have some difficulty with the planning. So I think that's kind of what you get when you work in your own system for so long, that you just get used to it and don't realize that other people haven't been along with the whole process. But ultimately, I think it was very successful for what I wanted to accomplish. It didn't sell many copies, but that's fine. Like, I was able to sort of use that to introduce myself to Zach Barth, as well as a bunch of other puzzle game people. And I hang out on the various puzzle Discord servers, and I met a lot of really great game developers with that, like the guy that made Baba Is You and Alan Hazelden, and a bunch of people like that. So it was just sort of, it was very significant, like mentally developmental wise, to make that.
That's one of the things that I really see you over the years being good at, is walking into a community and fitting in the right way. Like, I'm not at all surprised that you have found yourself in a Discord surrounded by these other people doing these games that you respect and like to do, because that's one of the things you're good at being. I think other people are sort of more nervous, or they feel they need some astral permission or something, and I think you've got it right the way that you've often approached becoming parts of game communities. I think that's great.
Yeah, well, I mean, for what it's worth, I do get nervous meeting new groups. I'm constantly questioning if I'm valid enough to be in that group, especially in the puzzle Discord group, just because at first, when I was in there, I was just like, oh, these people are way smarter than I am. They are, just leagues ahead. But then, as I sort of became more familiar with just the kinds of games that they surrounded themselves with, I realized it really is about experience.
I actually thought that was going to go the other way, where you just well, it turns out that Zach Barth's an idiot.
No, he's still brilliant. But I do think it's funny. He's never beaten any of his games before. He says that he's too lazy. He doesn't have the patience, but he likes making them. And he has his wife play test them to make sure that all his puzzles are solvable.
So she's the brains behind the operation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And similar to his games, like with Pictassembler, one of my goals was to basically make an unassailable systematic puzzle game, so that I could throw any kind of puzzle together, like a solution together, and I knew it would work. So I didn't have to worry about testing all the edge cases and stuff like that. The most I would have to worry about is just the thoughtfulness of the design, and it sort of freed up any worries I had about that.
Awesome. So we just two little bullet points here left. I think we're running a little long on time, but one of the things I love about you here is that you have more of an appetite to pay attention to the important things going on in the industry often than I do, at least, other people. And I'm curious, this is a time of movement in different ways. unexpected delays and new hardware and companies battling. What are you making of all this? Is there anything that you've got your eye on in particular? Of all the big game companies and platforms, what do you got your eye on, or is there something that excites you as a maker or a consumer?
As a consumer, the just absolutely ridiculous amount of free games that are out there now, between Xbox Game Pass and the Epic Games Store and PlayStation Plus and all that. I think that for consumers, it's better than it's ever been, and I think that they're really fortunate. As a game developer, unfortunately, I think that causes a lot more volatility in the industry because it's harder to build sustaining models off of that thing, and especially even people making games that sort of games as a service right now, where people try to pull you into the game's ecosystem to pick up updates and cosmetics and stuff like that. Much like sort of like with the feeling of having everything available at your fingertips. I think people's patience and tolerance for playing games just goes way down. I don't even think it's a matter of like an attention span issue or anything like that. I think it's just people's patience. It just doesn't need to be tested for certain things. So because of that, I think game developers, I think could do benefit more from making a lot smaller games that people can sort of take small bites out of at a time. Yeah, it's complicated.
Like jam games and puzzle games. That's what you're selling here.
Exactly.
He's a man who actually walks the walk.
Well, yeah, but I think that is going to be more beneficial. But at the same time, things always surprise you. Like I was really curious to see how Stadia was going to do, and it just
we're all really curious how Stadia is going to do.
Yeah. They whiffed it, but I think whoever is going to follow after them is probably going to hit it out of the park.
I see Elliot Mitchell, he's throwing the horns right now. So first of all, I want to mention that I'm wearing the same shirt as Elliot. Who's I don't know. I assume he's not heckling Dan. By the way, Indie Mega Booth may it rest its soul, a Boston invention, and Kelly Wallach just shut it down this past week.
Temporarily suspended.
We'll have to see why Elliot was throwing the horns at Dan later on in the chat, but
his big Stadia
happy hour for that. Yeah, we're getting up on happy hour. I have one last question for Dan, and then a couple reminders. And then I forgot to tease this at the beginning. This is terrible. I forgot to tease at the top as I was supposed to. That immediately following the show before the happy hour, we're going to be thrown back to Chris for a tiki drink demo. I'm calling it Tiki Talk.
Right. So get your Campari,
That's
get
perfect.
your white rum and your dark rum.
I love it.
All right. So Dan, the future question, the big scope thing ended on. What is next for Dan Williams? We saw, and you already mentioned that you've been flirting with Unity. Not that one has to go there inevitably, but what are you up to? What are you eyeballing?
So I am putting the finishing touches on my next game right now, Isle Assembler, which is assembling islands. I'm basically going through and shoring up the tutorial and then I'm gonna have people play test it soon. But yeah, I've been looking at Unity. I've been messing around with Magic of Voxel because it's just a really great tool to be able to build very, very simple 3D objects to put in a game. The developer Corey Martin, who made Pipe Push Paradise, he was showing off his latest game at PAX, Bonfire Peaks, which is fantastic, but it's not out yet, unfortunately. But he was telling me about how easy it was to make stuff in Magic of Voxel and port it to Unity, and I like easy, so that's what I've been looking at. So I've been working around with that. I have a puzzle game idea in mind. I'm not sure if it'll quite work yet. I need to test the mechanics, but I think it could potentially be pretty interesting. I think there are not enough interesting first-person puzzle games out there, so I want to try to tackle that. I've tried a few recently, and I won't name them because I don't want to trash talk all the developers or put their heart and soul into it, but there are some that are trying to evoke a certain thing and they are not doing it. So
Are you
I'm gonna try to
slagging Gwen
do that.
off with Kine? Is that what I'm hearing?
That's my plan.
She didn't even come to see your talk today, Dan. I fuck her.
Yeah, I hope happy hour isn't recorded. Then we can get into whatever you want to get into. But
Oh yeah, this is sorry, Gwen. We love you.
No.
Well,
I
I
can
mean,
name names at that point.
we do. Dan might not.
no. For strangers watching, we love Gwen. It's nothing to do with
Yes,
Gwen.
we do
All right.
love Gwen. She's awesome.
Oh, she's great.
Yeah. All right. So, Dan, thank you so much for submitting yourself to this. I don't know if it's stayed true the whole time, and you probably didn't. I don't know if everybody else knew. He's been dealing with a microphone echo in his ear. Yes.
It's not so bad now.
Yeah. Well, it's halfway to a speech jammer, so you did wonderfully. Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Right. So that's I'm gonna move you off like a real show. Yeah, he walked off, and applause.
I think he was pretty good.
Thanks for having
I'm
me
glad.
on.
I'm glad that we had him as our first guest.
Yeah,
Our
his
second,
audio is still on, but
his audio is still on, so we have to talk nicely about him. But our second guest next week could very well be in the studio audience today.
oh, yes, and I want to remind everybody: play dance games, active up games.itch.io. And the link is probably back up there. You've seen it a few times.
Yep.
Seriously, there's some good stuff there. Good, quick, fun jam stuff to play. I enjoyed playing them in prep for this. Speaking of playing games, remember we're focused on our Slack here, the Boston Game Slack, and there is a hashtag Play Games channel. So get in there. People have been playing GTA 5, and what a time to play GTA 5. You can grab it for free now. Jump on a server. Sure, you've been playing that.
Oh, I have been playing it. Forrest bought a penthouse. He actually spent real money, and we have been doing crimes. We've been crashing planes. Trevor, who was in the chat, I don't know if he's in the chat anymore, is my favorite driver because you never really know if you're going to get there to the end of it, but you're going to have a wild ride. Who else? A handful of other people. Everybody's absolutely 100% welcome.
Awesome. And when you're not playing games, post your stuff in the devlog. We all love to see it. Been loving to see every little experiment, every little screenshot and GIF that people post in devlog is really encouraging. It's great to see. I'm not getting verklempt, actually, to burp, but we can pretend it was emotional. No, but I appreciate that. It's I don't commit there much, but it motivates me just to see.
You like Dan Williams, you should walk the walk, and you should show off your stuff, which I know what you're working on. You're working on Block Pooper too, but nobody else knows that.
I had to agree. I had to click a legal agreement on my latest update because it's going to be premiered in the Wholesome Games Direct on Tuesday, and we're doing a little trailer premiere of the update to Kind Words. It's a way overblown presentation of some new stickers and colors, but I had to agree not to post it anywhere else, which is ridiculousness. Don't be like that.
Oscar.
Don't be like me. Share your stuff freely and quickly. I'll get back to that soon. That's it for our show. Thank you, everybody. We're going to throw over to Chris for the Tiki Talk. You've been wonderful. We'll see you next time. Thank you, Ichiro and Dan.
Thank you.
All right. Wasn't that great? Oh, I should mute everybody. Got to get this guy out of here. There we go. Now we're going to kick off our happy hour with a quick drink demo. I'm going to be making, of course, a classic Trader Vic's 1944 Mai Tai. Mai Tai is interesting because it's probably, the most well-known tiki drink. But, 9 times out of 10, if you order one at a bar, you're going to get this one over here, which is not even close to the original recipe, which is, of course, made by Trader Vic in 1944. This Mai Tai, the fake one over here, is actually more similar to a Royal Hawaiian Mai Tai, which was a variation that he did for the Royal Hawaiian Hotel in Hawaii back in I think it was in the 50s or 60s. It's also an interesting drink because it's kind of contentious who created it. Of course, now we know it was Trader Vic, but for many years it was debated whether or not it was Don the Beachcomber, who was kind of the progenitor of tiki as a whole, or Trader Vic, who essentially stole the idea of tiki bars from him, and is actually still around today. So, of course, here we have the classic Trader Vic's Mai Tai glass. which we'll not be using today for our demo. Today we'll be using this lovely glass from, get a nice background here, from Blossom Bar. Excellent establishment over in Brookline, which everyone should support. They're doing a great thing where they're making these little drink mixers that you can purchase. You just add liquor of your choice to these great mixers, and you can have a delicious craft cocktail experience at home. Anyway, so for tonight, we're making this Trader Vic's Mai Tai. And of course, the kind of the point of this is that it highlights some exceptional rums. So tonight we're going to be using Smith and Cross, which is a Jamaican-style rum. It has a strong, it's called Hogo. It's kind of a funk, got a real vibe. And then we're going to also have this Clement Rum Agricole, which is going to have a little bit more of a sort of grassy vegetal note. Well, this one is aged, so that'll be a little smoothed out. We're also going to be using a little dry curacao. A lot of people are familiar with Cointreau, which is pretty similar to that, but this is a little less sweet, a little more full-bodied. We're also going to need 1 ounce of lime juice, and we're going to need a little orgeat, which is an almond syrup, and a little heavy demerara syrup, which is a 2-to-1 sugar syrup. So, with all that said, let's get started here. So we're going to start off with our 1 ounce of fresh lime juice. It's got to be fresh. Let me tell you, you can't use bottled. It's just not the same. It's got this weird aftertaste. It's no good. I have a 1/2 ounce of this dry curacao here. I love this stuff. The Pierre Ferrand, absolutely amazing. Drop that in there. Also recommended to start with your cheapest ingredients first. That way, if you screw up, you spend less money on your mistake. Although here in the Chris Mayer household, mistakes are just happy accidents. So a little 1/4 ounce of that. 1/4 ounce of my orgeat. If you can't find orgeat, it's kind of hard to find. You can also make it yourself using almond milk. An almond milk reduction. You can Google recipes for that. Also, not too hard to find these days. Tiki's sort of having a resurgence a little bit. No, the shirt is absolutely part of it. A big thing in Tiki, I think, is that it's kind of about hospitality, about creating an environment for you to enjoy these drinks in. The craft cocktail is one thing, but creating another world, taking yourself on a journey is a huge component of it as well. And I believe that's all of our ingredients except for our rum. So we'll start here with the Smith and Cross. I tell you, this stuff is amazing, life-changing, highly recommended. 60% alcohol, which is a little much. So we're actually going to do just a hair under 1 ounce. And we're going to get our Clement here. Ooh, man, just amazing. Bam, right in there. Let's close up some of these bottles. And we're just going to give that a quick shake. Get some crushed ice over here. That's a little too much. And you know what? It's Thursday. Let's get wild, right? There's a little Hamilton 151. This is a Demerara style rum. This is going to be really thick and molassesy. Just want a little, maybe about a 1/2 ounce of that. Let's call it 3/4. Why not? And we're just going to float that right on top. Ooh, yeah. Then for a garnish, we want a little 1/2 of a lime. And we're going to take some mint and just bruise that a little bit, kind of get those oils, get that nice fresh aroma out there. We're going to drop that in there. Kind of the idea is that you want the lime shell represents an island, and the mint sprig is sort of like a plant on that island. So here we go. Look at that. Doesn't that look amazing? Oh, I can't really see the delicious. Actually, let me get a straw. Oh, oh, so good. Just perfect. Amazing drink. Highly recommended. But, you know, nothing wrong with this guy either. Had plenty of these in my day. Had a lovely cruise with my in-laws where, you know, I ordered a Mai Tai, didn't know what to expect. Got one of these. Nothing wrong with that either, right? Anyway, cheers, and let's, I'll just unmute everybody and we'll start our happy hour here. Thanks again for joining us. I posted that link in the chat. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, you can just fill that form out, or, you know, just drop one of us a message or something. Thanks again for everyone for coming out, and yeah, have a good night. Now everyone should be able to unmute yourselves if you want to hang out and join us for happy hour here. I'll just turn off the spotlight, and I'll also stop recording.
Party time.